Mary's son hadn't said anything during the game, but that night, he told her everything he saw. How he'd walked into the kitchen and caught Ted and my wife kissing. That's when Mary decided to tell me. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. I normally get up at 4 a.m. to make the 45-minute drive to the warehouse and start my route. But that Monday, I was up by 3:30. I had a plan. I waited until she was asleep, and then I quietly took her phone. It took some time. She uses multiple apps for everything, 4 or 5 messaging platforms at least. But eventually, I cracked her passcode and found what I was looking for. And what I saw confirmed everything. Text after text between her and Ted. Flirty messages. Explicit messages. Some with photos. Nudes. I felt sick. I took screenshots of several of them. Just enough to have what I needed without waking her. Then I put her phone back and left for work like it was any other day. Normally, I spend at least one weekday working close to home. On those days, if I took a lunch break, I'd often swing by the house. Especially during those stretches when our sex life had spiked. I thought it was connection, rekindling, a sign that we were making it work. But now, I started wondering if those good days were something else entirely. Pulled into the driveway, she was already inside, frantically trying to make it look like she'd just gotten back from a quick errand. She even had a grocery bag with a loaf of bread and some eggs, as if that would explain why she was out. I walked in calmly and set my keys on the counter. She looked startled, caught off guard, unsure whether I had seen her or not. I said, "So, you were at the store again, huh?" She smiled nervously and nodded. "Yeah, I just had to grab a couple things real quick." The police were keeping Caroline hidden. Her lover's widow had vowed to kill her, and honestly, Ryan hoped she succeeded. Within minutes of hitting send on the mass email, Ryan's inbox lit up with half a dozen replies. Then his phone started ringing. The first call was from the local newspaper, eager for an interview. He didn't hesitate. He sent the reporter a few photos, Caroline posing poolside in a skimpy bikini, and then laid out the story of her betrayal without pulling any punches. Next came a call from a local radio station wanting him live on air. Ryan agreed. For the next couple of hours, he bounced between calls from journalists and a flood of emails. Most were sympathetic, even from Caroline's own friends and family. Betrayal had a way of burning bridges for good. When his voice grew hoarse and he'd grown tired of retelling the same painful tale, Ryan turned his attention to something more therapeutic, purging Caroline's belongings. He grabbed a stack of heavy-duty garbage bags and filled them with everything she had left behind. Clothes, toiletries, sentimental trinkets, they all went in. For bulging bags later, he dragged them to the edge of the driveway beside the trash cans, where they belonged. Ryan's quiet suburban neighborhood hadn't seen a violent crime in over 5 years. So when morning came, the local paper ran a front-page banner. "Love triangle ends in murder." By the evening, TV crews had descended on his street. Every major news station led their broadcast with the story. A respected businessman gunned down by his wife, a young fiancé on the run, and the jilted man in the middle. They aired photos of Caroline in her bikini, the deceased Scott Jenkins, and a still image of Caroline labeled, "Wanted." As darkness fell, Ryan sat in silence. The streets were quiet again, the cameras gone, the adrenaline drained. He pulled out the bottle of bourbon, sat on the porch and poured the last of it down his throat. The next morning, a local TV crew arrived just in time to film a locksmith changing the locks on Ryan's front door. As the last deadbolt clicked into place, the locksmith posted, "No trespassing" signs around the property. The message was loud and clear. Caroline Bradley was no longer welcome here. Meanwhile, 2 hours later and a few miles away, police located Loretta Jenkins, the widow and accused killer, fast asleep in her car, parked just blocks from Caroline's apartment. She was taken into custody without incident. Back at Ryan's house, he was nursing a brutal hangover when a loud banging rattled the front door. "Go away," he groaned. "It's the police," came the firm response. He opened the door, squinting into the sunlight. "Mr. Erickson, your fiancée is asking to come home. She says she wants to explain everything." Ryan stepped outside, jaw clenched. "I don't have a fiancée," he said coldly. "And this?" He gestured around him. This is not her home. It never will be. He pointed toward the squad car parked at the curb. Please take her away before I do something I'll regret. Then he motioned to the 4 heavy-duty garbage bags by the garage. That's all her stuff. Tell her I meant every word. I will never forgive her, and I will never speak to her again. Ever. From inside the police car, Caroline's anguished voice rang out. Ryan, I love you. He didn't flinch. He turned, walked inside, and slammed the door behind him. Then he cranked the volume on the television, changed the channel to an old western, and sank into the couch, ready to lose himself in a world where the good guys always knew who the villains were. No one ever admitted to sending the anonymous photos that tipped off Loretta Jenkins about her husband's affair, but by Monday morning, everyone noticed the smug satisfaction on Scotty's secretary's face. Whether she was responsible or not, it was clear she didn't mourn his downfall or Caroline's. Caroline quickly became a pariah in the community. Her reputation in tatters. She was fired before even stepping foot back into her office. With the owner dead and his widow's high-priced attorneys failing to argue temporary insanity, the company was sold to a Chinese investor. The new owner wasted no time shutting it down and relocating operations to a remote island nation, leaving the entire staff jobless. Caroline's social circle collapsed just as swiftly. Her friends distanced themselves. Her family expressed nothing but shame and disappointment. After giving her testimony in court, she packed up what little remained of her life into the back of her car. She had no job, no fiancé, no support, just a trail of destruction behind her. As she left town, Caroline couldn't resist driving by Ryan's house one last time. A bold red sold sticker stretched across the for sale sign. He was gone. Tears blurred her vision. She pulled the car over and closed her eyes, trying to summon the feeling of his arms around her. The warmth, the safety, the love she had shattered. A sob escaped her lips. The silence in the car was suffocating. For the first time, she didn't just feel regret. She felt empty. And in that moment, Caroline wished she were dead. Quiet too. She hasn't confronted me, but I think she knows. The timing's too perfect. The Derek detail too specific. She's pieced it together. Am I the bad guy here? Maybe. I didn't exactly take the high road. But after 6 years of being labeled boring, average, and constantly treated like I wasn't good enough for the woman I love, I'm struggling to feel guilty. Mallory wanted to talk about settling. Well, now she doesn't have to worry about it. Date 1. Things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. Buckle up, the entitlement is off the charts. Update 1 continued the confrontation and the fallout. 3 days after everything went down, Cassandra finally confronted me. She came home from work, quiet, serious. She didn't take off her coat, just sat me down at the kitchen table and asked point blank, "Did you tell Garrett about Derek?" I looked her straight in the eye and replied, calmly, "I mentioned I thought I knew a Derek from Mallory's office when Garrett and I were talking business," which technically was true. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was trying to read every word between the lines. Then she said, "Mallory thinks you saw something on her phone at the party. Did she have something on her phone she shouldn't have?" I took a breath. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Cass? And that's when things got interesting. The same woman who, for 6 years, had brushed off every cruel remark, every passive-aggressive jab with, "That's just how she is," suddenly had tears in her eyes. "You destroyed her life," she said quietly. "Her wedding's off. She's living with her parents. Garrett won't even speak to her." I stayed calm. I mentioned a name in a LinkedIn message. If that destroyed her life, then maybe her life wasn't as solid as she pretended it was. I let it sink in before continuing. "You know what I did, and you know what she did. To me, to us, for 6 years. That stopped her cold." She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. After a moment, she got up, walked to our bedroom, and slammed the door. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The real drama started 2 days later. I came home from work and found Mallory in my house, on my couch. Cassandra had let her in. There was no hello, no apology, no lead-in, just immediate entitlement. "You need to fix this," she said, arms crossed. "Fix what?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "You sabotaged my relationship. You need to call Garrett and tell him you lied." I didn't even raise my voice. "I didn't lie. You implied things. You made him suspicious." I sat down across from her, and for the first time really looked at her, without Cassandra's loyalty clouding my view. Mallory looked wrecked, hair greasy and pulled back. No makeup. Baggy, faded athleisure that looked slept in. The same woman who mocked my boring lifestyle now looked like she hadn't left her house in days. "Mallory," I said slowly. "I mentioned a name, that's all. What Garrett found. That was already there." Her face flushed red. "I wasn't doing anything wrong. Derek and I are just friends." "Friends who meet at hotels every other Tuesday?" She flinched, then said, almost bitterly, "You don't understand. Garrett was always working. Always too busy with his company." Ah, there it was. The justification. The same twisted logic that probably helped her sleep at night. The same mindset that had her calling me dull and calling Bryce the ex a real man. Now here she was, disheveled, desperate, and demanding I undo the mess she created. The moment everything unraveled. Derek paid attention to me. That's how she tried to justify it. "So you cheated," I said flatly. "It wasn't cheating," Mallory snapped. "We never. It was emotional support." That's when Cassandra, who had been sitting silently in the corner this whole time, finally spoke. "Mal, you told me you were sleeping with him." The look Mallory shot at my wife could have curdled milk. "That was private girl talk," she hissed. "You weren't supposed to." "I wasn't supposed to what?" Cassandra cut in, voice sharp and rising. "Care? Care that you were cheating on your fiancé? The same fiancé you swore was perfect for you? The one you begged me to help you plan a wedding for?" And then Mallory said something that, I think, finally opened Cassandra's eyes. "Oh, please," she sneered. "Like you haven't thought about it. At least I had the guts to go after what I wanted, instead of settling for safe and boring." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. I looked at Cassandra. Her face cycled through a storm of emotions. Shock, hurt, disbelief, rage, before landing on something I'd never seen her direct at Mallory before. Disgust. "Get out," Cassandra said quietly. Mallory blinked. "Cass, get out." Something in Cassandra's voice must have clicked, because Mallory finally got up and started gathering her things. But because she's Mallory, she couldn't leave without a final parting shot. "Fine. Enjoy your boring little life with your boring little husband. When you wake up at 40 and realize you wasted your youth on mediocrity, don't come crying to me." The door slammed behind her, and for the first time in 6 years, the house felt quiet. We sat there in silence for a while. Then Cassandra finally said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything. For letting her talk to you like that. For defending her. For being so blind to what she really was. I wanted to be petty. Wanted to say, "I told you so." But I looked at my wife, who had just lost her best friend of over a decade, and I couldn't do it. "She showed you what she wanted you to see," I said gently. Cassandra let out a bitter laugh. "No. She showed me exactly who she was. I just didn't want to look." That night we talked, really talked, about how Mallory's constant digs had affected me, about how they'd affected us, about how Cassandra had enabled it for years because confronting her friend would have been harder, and about how, somehow, we move forward from here together. I thought that was the end of it. Mallory was out of our lives. Cassandra and I were finally repairing the damage. Done deal. But I was wrong. The next blow. 3 days later, I got called into my boss's office. Apparently, someone had contacted the company anonymously, accusing me of cyber harassment and digital stalking. Serious claims, including hacking into personal devices and intentionally sabotaging a private relationship. They didn't mention names, but it didn't take a genius to connect the dots. It seems Mallory wasn't quite finished with me after all. Fortunately, My boss knows me well. We've worked together for 5 years, and he's always been fair. He called me into his office that morning, closed the door, and told me about the complaint. Someone had called HR, anonymously, accusing me of cyber harassment and digital stalking. Allegations of hacking, of interfering in someone's private relationship. I didn't need to ask who made the call. I already knew. He gave me a chance to explain. I kept it professional, left out the more personal details, and simply said that a personal conflict had clearly spilled into a professional setting. He nodded, listened, and said he'd handle it. The accusation was vague. No proof was offered. The caller refused to leave a name. Still, I knew this wasn't over. That night, my phone rang. It was Garrett, the first time we'd spoken since the LinkedIn messages. "Hey man," he said. He sounded exhausted. "I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For having the balls to hint at what was going on," he said. "I know that couldn't have been easy, considering the people involved." I chose my next words carefully. "Honestly, I was just trying to network. But I'm sorry about how everything turned out." He gave a short laugh, the kind that's more hollow than amused. "Don't be. You saved me from marrying someone who was cheating before the wedding vows were even spoken." There was nothing left to say after that. We hung up, and I sat there, realizing just how close we'd all come to living lives built on lies. The mask slips further. Can you imagine if I'd found out after the wedding? After kids? Garrett's voice was flat. It would have been a disaster. A messy divorce. Custody battles. Lawyers. All of it. We talked a bit longer. He told me how Mollery had been blowing up his phone. Non-stop calls, texts, voicemails, cycling between begging him to forgive her and threatening to destroy his reputation if he didn't take her back. She even showed up at his office unannounced and caused a scene in the lobby. His business partner had to step in and threaten to call security before she finally left. "The thing is," Garrett said, "I really thought I knew her, but the person I'm seeing now? This vindictive, entitled version of her, maybe this is who she's always been. I just never saw it." I thought about all the snide comments, the passive-aggressive digs, the jokes at my expense that were somehow always just how she is. Yeah. Maybe that's exactly who she's always been. After we hung up, I went to the kitchen and found Cassandra stress baking. Her usual coping mechanism when life gets overwhelming. Flour on the counter, mixing bowl in hand. I told her about the anonymous complaint to my work, about my conversation with Garrett, about Mollery showing up at his office. She put the bowl down and leaned against the counter, rubbing her temples. "She called me too," she said. 27 times today. 27. Voicemails, texts, calling me every name in the book. Said I betrayed her, that I chose that bastard over our friendship, that I'd regret this when you inevitably bore me to death, and I'm left with no friends. She gave a bitter smile, but her eyes were tired. 27 times, I repeated. That's not just anger, that's harassment. I saved the voicemails, she said quietly. We looked at each other then, and we both knew. This wasn't just hurt feelings anymore. This was escalating. Fast. And it wasn't going to end on its own. At this point, it was becoming something else entirely. Maybe we should talk to a lawyer, I suggested. Cassandra didn't even hesitate. I'll call tomorrow. My cousin knows someone who handles harassment cases. As I write this final update, Mollery has launched what can only be described as a smear campaign on social media. Nothing explicit. She's not that reckless. But the posts are clearly aimed at us. Vague comments about fake friends, homewreckers, and karma catching up to those who destroy happiness. This from the same woman who spent 6 years telling me I wasn't good enough. The same woman who cheated on her fiancé, who tried to get me fired. And now she's painting herself as the victim. But here's the thing, her mask is off. Garrett sees her for who she really is. Cassandra does too. And now, so do the people in her circle. The cracks in her story are showing, and people are starting to notice that things just don't add up. Actions have consequences. And Mollery? She's learning that that's just how she is, isn't an excuse anymore. This will be my last update. Not because there isn't more I could say, but because my wife and I are ready to close the door on this entire chapter of our lives. But for those of you who followed along, here's how it all shook out. The harassment escalated for about a week after my last post. Mallory went full nuclear. Beyond the cryptic social media posts and relentless phone calls, she crossed a serious line. She created a fake LinkedIn profile and began messaging clients at my company, claiming I was unstable and untrustworthy. She even sent an anonymous email to Cassandra's boss, suggesting they investigate her work computer for inappropriate behavior. At that point, the decision was easy. We involved legal counsel, and we documented everything. Her fake profiles, the voicemails, the messages, the email, every trace of her attempts to damage our lives. And when our lawyer reached out with a formal cease and desist, and the warning of potential legal consequences, it finally stopped. Just like that.
No epalegi. No ekuntebileti.
Just silence. And I remember all those comments she used to make? The digs about my mediocre salary, my boring lifestyle? All that noise about me being less than. Turns out Mallory was drowning in debt. Like terrifying levels of debt. Nearly $60,000 in the hole. She'd been living a full-blown Instagram lifestyle, designer bags, luxury dinners, weekend getaways, all on credit cards and borrowed money. Garrett only found out because she kept dodging questions about her financial contributions while they were planning the wedding. That was her plan all along. Marry Garrett. Let him pay off her debt. Keep living the high life. And the affairs? Those were her backup plans. Guys she kept around just in case things with Garrett didn't work out. When the truth came out during the legal proceedings, it spread like wildfire through our social circle. Suddenly, people had stories about money Mallory borrowed and never paid back, about times she stuck someone with a huge bill, about how she always had expensive stuff but never seemed to pick up a check. The same woman who spent 6 years mocking my boring life? Turns out, she was a broke serial cheater, desperately chasing a lifestyle she couldn't afford, while stringing along whoever would feed her ego or her wallet. Cassandra took it hard, not because she missed Mallory, but because she felt foolish for not seeing it sooner. We actually started couples counseling to work through everything. Not just the fallout, but the cracks Mallory had exploited between us for years. It's been painful, but honest. We're learning to trust again, to talk without the noise, to rebuild without the shadow of someone who never deserved to be part of our story. Counseling didn't just help us heal, it helped us understand. Our therapist guided Cassandra through the realization that toxic friendships can be just as damaging, sometimes more so, than toxic romantic ones. Mallory hadn't just manipulated her. She'd emotionally abused both of us, subtly and consistently, for years. As for the harassment campaign, our lawyer sent her a formal cease and desist. When she violated it by showing up at Cassandra's workplace, we filed for a restraining order. She tried to contest it, of course, but the judge took one look at the evidence. The repeated calls, threatening texts, fake social profiles, slanderous reviews, and granted it on the spot. The last we heard, through the grapevine, she'd moved back in with her parents, permanently. She's working at her dad's accounting firm now. The irony isn't lost on me. The woman who mocked me for being boring is now punching spreadsheets at a desk job she swore she'd never take. And the roster of side guys? Gone. Derek, Travis, Paul, even the ex, they all dropped her once they found out about one another. No more designer dinners or hotel hookups. She's reportedly banned from 2 of her favorite restaurants after trying to dine and dash. As for Garrett, his defamation suit is progressing. His lawyer's confident. The case is strong. And Mallory's meltdown is documented in black and white. But the real win, Cassandra and I are better than ever. Counseling helped us face not just what Mallory put us through, but the things we'd avoided talking about for years. We started listening. We started being honest. And, most importantly, we started choosing each other every single day. This whole experience was brutal, yes, but it also burned away a poison that had quietly been seeping into our lives for too long. We're moving forward now, free, clear, and stronger than ever.